just a fortnight ago. Fortnight. Okay. Try that again. Okay. Japan on Wednesday. Why don't they just say... Okay. It's not Japan, of course. Whatever. I don't know why. It just struck me as funny. Delete all this.
1, 2, 3.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it! You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken millions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back! It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity, it is ecological balance. There are no nations, there are no peoples, there are no nations, there are no Arabs, there are no third worlds, there is no West. There is only one holistic system, our system. You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime.
Welcome to the Eschaton Review, a subsidiary of the Heat Death of the Universe podcast. A little table setting up top. I'm unable to give a meaningful timestamp from my current location, since I'm traveling outside the Earth's atmosphere at 17,500 miles per hour, or 28,000 kilometers per hour for you metric system stands. I see the sun rise and set 16 times in my relative 24-hour time period. I'm nestled in between the orbital paths of the International Space Station and the Hubble telescope, in the cozy womb of my extremely above-ground bunker, suspended in orbit at 437 kilometers above sea level, or 271 miles above sea level for those using the wretched imperial unit. Therefore, as we all know, without having to look this up on omnicalculator.com, I'm encircling our pale blue dot at an orbital speed of 1.553 hours, or 93 minutes and 10 seconds for you seconds heads out there. In other words, I'm able to get a full 360-degree view of the planet at a faster pace than the runtime of an average superhero movie. Okay, but for the sake of posterity and soothing my own OCD-like symptoms, let's establish right now that it is Thursday, September 5th, 2:45 in the morning on the east coast of North America. That's EST. Also some parts of Central and South America for our more international listeners. I chose this part of the world to timestamp because that's what I'm seeing outside of my porthole at this very moment, and where we'll begin the episode in earnest. So let's get into it. Down below, I spy a little nation state called Venezuela. Something's going on down there. Venezuela moves Christmas to October 1st. President Nicolás Maduro decrees. So, Christmas has come early in Venezuela, at least for the country's embattled President Nicolás Maduro. Maduro, who is at the center of a widely contested election. I'm going to say not so widely contested as the writer at globalnews.canada may have us believe, but maybe say more about that later. He announced on Monday that he would move Christmas to October 1st. Quote, "It's September and it already smells like Christmas," he said during his weekly TV show, More with Maduro. "That's why this year, as a way of paying tribute to you all and in gratitude to you all, I'm going to decree an early Christmas for October 1st. Christmas arrived for everyone in peace, joy, and security," Maduro declared. Wow, this guy sounds like a real fucking heavy-handed dictator monster type, if you ask me. That's kind of what this article is getting at. Even in the title, you can tell, use of the word decree, like he's this singular villain who says, "I'll tell you when Christmas is, god damn it." But as the quote from him kind of clearly points out, this seems to be just some sort of gesture towards the people who elected him to be president again. Of course, let's say many bad actors north of Venezuela, they've rejected the fact that these were the election results. It's funny how the United States does that. Just meddles in elections all around the world, and including this one. Obviously, the opposition party is very clearly tied to US-backed, think tanks and various, basically CIA cutouts. And they've been doing this forever. I mean, if you're truly skeptical of anything I'm saying here, just look at the history of the last 20 odd years even further back than that, but just go 20 years even, go 10 years even. Even just go back to 2018 and the shit that they did with Juan Guaido, and they just declared, this is the real president, everybody. A guy who wasn't even in the election. And of course, people in the upper brass of the U.S. have just gone on CNN and literally bragged about orchestrating coup d'etat in Venezuela. John Bolton, that fucking walrus-looking motherfucker, he's pretty proudly said that, for instance, and also written it in his memoirs and so on. But yeah, Christmas has come early for Venezuela, and sure, why not? I mean, it's a little silly, but I don't know. I don't see how anyone could read any sort of negative intentions or something into this. It's much like something we bring up on the podcast writ large often. The at what cost, usually applied to China, but it gets applied to other places as well. Maybe not as consistently and in those kind of words, that kind of tone. But this is a but at what cost kind of story, if you ask me. Christmas has come early for Venezuela, but at what cost? Next up, in secret talks, U.S. offers amnesty to Venezuela's Maduro for ceding power. This is a hilarious one. This is very mafia-like behavior. Basically, just really sum it up, the offer is, hey, Maduro, we made up some drug trafficking charges against you. It'd be a shame if someone couldn't just make those disappear. If you play ball, these charges disappear. This has not worked, I will say. This is also a little bit of an old news story. I should maybe have mentioned that really up top, but a few of these items today are in a vast back catalog of things that were just not gotten to for the sake of time and whatnot on the mainline podcast, that Heat Death of the Universe podcast. But yeah, this did not persuade Maduro to just give up his position as president. As you can see by this first story I read, he just fucking changed Christmas. So I guess it's more just notable for the hubris of it all. Who the fuck do we think we are? By we, I mean America, just going around the world telling people who their real presidents are. Just outright blackmailing people like this. How does the Wall Street Journal phrase it? I do have some comparative articles on this. So the Wall Street Journal, of course, is very much anti-Maduro. So yeah, they phrase it as the U.S. offers amnesty. How nice of them, right? But say another website that's maybe a little more, not even necessarily sympathetic to Maduro per se, but let's say more opposed to U.S. imperial adventuring. You find titles more like U.S. offers to drop charges against Venezuela's Maduro if he leaves power. Let's read a little bit from that one. The Biden administration is pushing Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro to resign in exchange for him receiving amnesty from U.S. drug charges. Washington recently contested the Venezuelan presidential election, claiming Edmundo González won at the polls. The Wall Street Journal reported speaking with 3 sources who said the White House is willing to pardon Maduro and other top Venezuelan officials and agree not to seek extradition to the U.S. on drug trafficking charges. In exchange, Maduro would leave power before his presidential term ends in January. Now, you'd think if the U.S. had the ability to just go and extradite Maduro, and that they had this airtight drug trafficking charge or charges just ready to go, they would definitely do it. So I think this was also described as yes, in the next paragraph here, also quoting the Wall Street Journal. The journal described the policy as a long shot bid to force Maduro from power. Long shot indeed. And this article basically goes on to explain what I already did about all of this election nonsense, which has been covered on the other podcast a little bit, and the history leading up to it. I guess just for good measure, I'll finish this short article. For decades, successive American presidents have attempted to oust Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. The coup efforts have failed to push the communist government from power in Caracas. I don't know if they're necessarily a communist government. Socialist, yes. I mean, whatever. It's splitting hairs. Under President Barack Obama, the U.S. placed heavy sanctions on Venezuela. Once Donald Trump took power, he increased the economic war and attempted to replace Maduro with Juan Guaido. Trump's Department of Justice charged Maduro with drug trafficking and offered a $15 million bounty for his arrest. While the sanctions and coups have not led to regime change, it has increased the suffering of Venezuelans. The U.S. economic war has contributed to tens of thousands of deaths. And that's the last line of the article. Go out on a positive note. Yes, contrary to certain opinions, the insane number of U.S. sanctions around the world often directly result in people dying. If not dying, let's say immensely suffering. And the party line is always, our sanctions are surgically targeted at only the bad guys in power. We're not trying to, are you crazy? Do you think we're trying to, destroy the quality of life in another country so badly that people will, even if they kind of like their leaders, will end up having to revolt against them because they're so fucking hungry and miserable? No, we wouldn't do that. We're surgically targeting the leaders. It's a lot like another fun little imperial adventurer talks about when it comes to bombing terrorists who just have so many fucking human shields to get in the way. But I've digressed. Let's move on. A final bullet point on Venezuela. This is the most recent one of the things I've read, I believe, so far. The United States has just literally stolen Maduro's airplane. It would be like another country just stealing Air Force One. And not only doing that, but then going on major television program and bragging about it, which is what happened here. So now when you search Bing.com or Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you like to use, when you search these things for, let's say, U.S. steals airplane, Venezuela, something to that extent, you won't see a lot of the headlines using the word steal or stole. No, it's seize. It's been seized. It sounds very legal and by the books, right? We've seized this object from this bad guy. Look, there's a picture of him. He's got military style epaulets on, and he's got a mustache. Doesn't he look kind of like Saddam Hussein, folks? Yeah. It's okay that we just try to kill him. Yeah, that's another thing. There was just a really botched assassination attempt on Maduro back in 2018, where explosives were strapped to these kind of cheap drones, and the people operating them tried to just fly them into Maduro as he was giving a speech, with a bunch of other, people around as well. So that's cool. Of course, the U.S. Vehemently denied having anything to do with this, despite the fact that they're constantly they're proudly proclaiming that they are rigging coup d'etat in Venezuela at least every presidential election cycle, if not more often than that. So many botched attempts at overthrowing the Venezuelan government, or by means of whatever, some kind of pathetic, failed armed engagements, which happened, I think, 2019, around the Guaido times. Just a total clusterfuck. Maybe for those who haven't heard about that, I'll pick that up next week. I'll go through the whole saga, because it's too hard for me to just remember off the top of my head. But airplane, that's what we were talking about. That's what I was talking to myself about here in my little bunker. So I decided to go with a better headline. U.S. steals airplane used by Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro. This is at antiwar.com, a website I'm not really familiar with, but, it has all the lefty signifiers, so whatever. I just read from the fucking or from the Wall Street Journal, so, time to swing over to the other side for a second. Fair and balanced, that's what I do. A U.S. official bragged to CNN about the move, saying that stealing a, quote, foreign head of state's plane is unheard of. Wow, we're really breaking new ground. The U.S. has stolen the official airplane of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro under claims that it was purchased by violating U.S. sanctions, U.S. officials told CNN on Monday. See, it's the beauty about sanctions is you can just kind of make up anything and apply them to anyone. When you're big-dicked America, apparently. So, actually, that's a sanctions violation, sir. We're going to have to take this airplane. The U.S. officials described the plane as the equivalent of Air Force One and said it was taken by the U.S. from the Dominican Republic and flown to Florida. The Justice Department claimed the plane was purchased in Florida and exported to Venezuela in April 2023. This sends a message all the way up to the top, one of the U.S. officials boasted to CNN. Seizing the foreign head of state's plane is unheard of. For criminal matters, we're sending a clear message here that no one is above the law. Oh, really? No one's above the law. Interesting. Let me just finish this asshole's quote. We're sending the clear message here that no one is above the law. No one is above the reach of U.S. sanctions. Yes, the betentacled reach round the globe of U.S. sanctions. Just killing and maiming and immiserating everywhere they go. God bless them. I mean, there's not much more to it than that. It's just... It really seems almost like a kind of sour grapes, like childish move, because, the previously mentioned threat against Maduro obviously didn't work. I don't know why they would think that they could actually ever possibly work, but the attempt to get support for the opposition in Venezuela, which is like clearly just CIA-backed bullshit where people go around like burning down buildings and making up just complete fabrications about electoral results and whatnot. That didn't work again. So now they're like, well, God damn it. Can we take this motherfucker's airplane at least? Yeah. I think we can pull that off. America, the great declining empire, we can still steal your airplane. That should be written on the fucking Statue of Liberty. Or, I don't know, down at the southern border on the joint Trump-Biden-Harris wall to greet those looking for a better life in the United States. We can still steal your motherfucking airplane. All right. We head north from Venezuela to good old Canada. What's going on in Canada? Well, I did try to search around for just anything interesting going on in Canada, and a lot of it was quite boring until I found this gem of a very recent headline, just hot off the presses, fresh out of the oven. Fresh out of the oven? Hot off the presses, hot out of the oven? Whatever. Okay. Releasing names of 900 alleged Nazi war criminals who fled to Canada could embarrass federal government, bureaucrats told. Subheader, large numbers of soldiers from a Ukrainian Waffen SS division fled to Canada after the Second World War. Now, there was a bigger story that came up, I don't even know, time is a flat circle, let's say a year ago, maybe more, 2 years ago could even be, I don't know. About the Canadian Parliament giving a rousing standing ovation to a literal ex-Nazi who is one of these, 900 plus alleged Nazi war criminals, but not alleged. It's very clear that the guy whose name I do not remember, that everyone was applauding for, which now, of course, even people who were aware of that story have probably memory hold that one, but anyway. But this one, let's get into it. A list of 900 alleged Nazi war criminals who fled to Canada could remain secret as federal officials come under increasing pressure to censor the records because they could prove embarrassing to this country. I should mention this is in the Ottawa Citizen, which I know nothing about. I have no idea what its angle is or anything like that. Library and Archives Canada in Ottawa consulted in June and July with what it called a discrete group of individuals or organizations about whether the list should be made public, according to documents obtained by the Ottawa Citizen. I love how this is just about being embarrassed, by the way. Boy, would our faces be red if we knew we'd been harboring Nazis for all these years. Which we already know. This is sort of just a formality that's really being discussed in this article. I think it's already pretty well established that tons of specifically Ukrainian Nazis who fought on the side of the Nazis in World War II found the welcoming bosom of Canada soon after the end of the war. Continuing on, those consulted included members of Canada's Ukrainian community, records show, but Library and Archives Canada, also known as LAC, did not include Holocaust survivors nor Holocaust scholars who had advocated for a full release of the list of alleged Nazi war criminals, Jewish and Holocaust academics say. Sounds pretty fucking anti-Semitic, you know? People have been, wagging their fingers at all kinds of other people lately about anti-Semitism, and, I don't know, withholding these kind of records that Holocaust survivors and Holocaust scholars are demanding to be released. They want to know if they live in the same country or down the street from Nazi war criminals. But LAC, the Library and Archives Canada, not so hot on this because it could prove embarrassing. We might embarrass ourselves, guys. Let's just suppress these records. Let's openly suppress these records. Liberal democracy in action. The article goes into great detail about a lot of technical aspects of this, so I think I can just probably leave it there. Oh, actually, they get into the standing ovation kerfluffle. I always said kerfuffle, but then I feel like I found out recently that it's actually kerfluffle, which sounds like an even funnier word. I don't know. Write in. Tell me which one it is, folks. Fluffle or fuffle? Okay, a little bit more detail on this. Jamie Kersner Roberts of the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies in Toronto questioned why survivors of the Nazis' genocide campaign were not invited by LAC to give their views on whether the list of Nazis and their collaborators should be made public. Quote, "We know many survivors that feel very strongly about this issue and would have wanted the opportunity to speak. Why were they not included? Do they not have a right to be heard on questions related to the investigations against Canadians who may have been involved in committing acts of genocide against their families?" And this group of Holocaust studies people were also shut out from attending the advisory meetings and were actually just not even aware that they'd been conducted in the first place until later. The idea that Canadians should be worried about the embarrassment or privacy of war criminals is obscene. We know that individuals involved in implementing the genocide of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust have been living peacefully in Canada for decades, and it is well past time that all the facts come to light. Then another Jewish advocacy group has pushed for the release of these records. And that same group, who has a Hebrew name that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, they, in February 2023, a submission to the House of Commons Committee on Access to Information, they pointed out that the Canadian government's approach to Nazi collaborators had been marked with, quote, intentional harboring of known Nazi war criminals, as well as, quote, deliberate inaction. In September 2023, Immigration Minister Mark Miller acknowledged Canada has a really dark history with Nazis in Canada. It's a good sentence. Very full circle. Canada has a real dark history with Nazis in Canada. Okay. There was a point in our history where it was easier to get in as a Nazi than it was as a Jewish person, he said. I think that's a history we have to reconcile. Here we go. This can prove that I actually did not read this entire article before taking to the microphone to talk about it, because this answers all the things I was saying earlier. It has been almost a year since MPs of all parties gave 2 standing ovations to Yaroslav Hunka, a resident of North Bay, Ontario, who was described by then House of Commons Speaker Anthony Rota as a hero. But news quickly emerged that Hunka had served in a Ukrainian Waffen-SS unit. The incident became an international embarrassment for Canada as Holocaust historians, Jewish groups, and the Polish government pointed out that Hunka's unit had been involved in war crimes, including massacres of women and children. The division was also used by the Nazis to crush a national uprising in Slovakia, again prompting allegations of war crimes. There's no evidence Hunka, now 99, was directly involved in those incidents. Well, thank Christ, he was just a member of the Waffen-SS. But we can't prove that he was there with a torch, lighting houses on fire. Okay. But the sight of MPs cheering on a Waffen-SS veteran caused intense anger among Canadians, according to documents obtained in June by the Ottawa Citizen. Holocaust survivors wrote to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about friends killed by Hunka's division, the 14th SS Galician. While families of Canadian soldiers killed fighting the Nazis during the Second World War peppered MPs with questions about why they honored a soldier who had sworn allegiance to Adolf Hitler. The emails pointed out the stupidity of the parliamentarians for not realizing that Hunka had fought against Allied forces during the Second World War. One Holocaust survivor pointed out to Trudeau that the 14th Division of the Waffen-SS murdered their friends in Slovakia in late 1944. This seems like pretty good proof that this 99-year-old guy was, let's say 99% directly involved in these war crimes, but even if not, he did by definition swear an allegiance to Adolf Hitler by being a member of the Waffen-SS. Okay. And backing out the door into the shrubbery, Homer Simpson style, away from Canada, we leap all the way across the Pacific Ocean to South Korea. South Korea's nominated human rights chief sparks uproar over his anti-LGBTQ stance. Ang Chung-ho, who opposes anti-discrimination laws, also rejects the theory of evolution and wants creationism lessons in schools. Nice. A former judge nominated to lead South Korea's human rights body has sparked outrage with his comments against the LGBTQ community and the theory of evolution, with observers citing him as proof of the country's flawed system for official appointments. Ang Chung-ho, 67, is under scrutiny for his statements in Parliament suggesting that homosexuality is a tool used by communists to incite revolution. If only. An, the proposed chairman of the National Human Rights Commission of Korea, is under fire from lawmakers and human rights advocates for his stance against a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill being drafted by opposition parties. The legislation aims to ban discrimination based on attributes such as sexual orientation, race, gender, age, religion, and disability. It's kind of, I think most people would be a little shocked that a so-called modern liberal democracy style friend of America country like South Korea doesn't already have something like this. But anyway, During a parliamentary nomination hearing on Tuesday, An, also a former public security prosecutor, expressed concerns that the proposed law could be, quote, exploited by Marxists to suppress criticism of ideologies that oppose universal human values. Quote, I think it could be used to start a communist revolution by Marxists, as I wrote in my book, An said in response to a question from opposition lawmaker Shin Jan-sik. Anti-discrimination laws can infringe on the freedom of expression of the majority, he argued. We must respect the position of minorities, but this should not infringe on the rights of others. I think this guy doesn't understand what anti-discrimination laws actually consist of, as you can combine freedom of speech and expression with such laws, which mainly have to do with things like hiring practices, firing practices, etc. Let's find out why he's so stupid. It might be illuminated in this next sentence. A devout Christian and former Constitutional Court Justice, An also dismissed international calls for comprehensive anti-discrimination laws. His views contrast with the National Human Rights Commission's long-standing call since 2006 for the Korean government to enact an anti-discrimination law. He also reiterated his belief that such legislation could contribute to the spread of diseases such as AIDS, anal cancer, and hepatitis. Ooh, golly. That's what anti-discrimination bills get you. Anal cancer. Additionally, An made clear his rejection of evolution in favor of creationism, advocating for the latter to be taught alongside evolution in schools. Well, I mean, comparatively to the religious nutcases in America, I guess that's downright progressive, because at least they want to teach creationism alongside evolutionary theory and not just completely ban evolutionary theory. But maybe he's kind of hedging his bets there. I don't know. He was quoted as saying simply, I believe that God created the heavens and the earth, while evolution lacks scientific evidence. I'm sure right after that quote, he goes on to explain very persuasively that lack of scientific evidence. But it's not in the article. And so people are expecting that the president will proceed with this appointment, and this guy will be in this fairly prominent position within the government, being in charge of human rights. A guy who thinks that anti-discrimination laws bring about anal cancer, that's the guy you want in charge of your Human Rights Commission. A little bit more here. Human rights activists have reacted strongly to An's appointment and his perceived hate speech. Yes, perceived. Yang Un-sok, a senior official at the Seoul Queer Culture Festival Organizing Committee, told This Week in Asia, I was shocked by his appointment. How can someone who opposes a comprehensive anti-discrimination law lead the National Human Rights Organization? Good question. His strong religious biases would likely influence his work, which would violate the constitutional principle of separating religion from state affairs, Yang warned. Kim Min-woong, a former Gyeonggi University political scientist and theology professor, said An's stance reflected the Christian fundamentalist views that were becoming increasingly prevalent among South Korea's large Protestant churches. Quote, it is inappropriate for someone with such a narrow worldview to hold a position meant to protect human rights, he said. Okay. In the same neighborhood as South Korea, we move over to Japan, where some wacky shit went down. This is a little bit dated, but whatever. I'm in space. I don't know these things. Headline: Tokyo governor candidate strips naked during speech, comma, and the Joker is also running. So I saw a separate article only about the stripping nude, and then I went searching a little bit more about that, and I found that there was also someone claiming to be Richard T. Joker himself. The T is for twisted, running for governorship. Just to explain the first part, the nudity part, the separate article on this. Japanese political candidate strips on national television broadcasts. Asks viewers if they think she's sexy. She's alright. Okay. In a bold bid for votes ahead of Tokyo's gubernatorial election, one candidate made waves by shedding more than just light on her policies during her televised campaign speech. The other funny thing about this, which you can see in the still photos, is they have like a sign language interpreter behind these people. So she's having to like sit there and sign this recently stripped of clothes lady is saying. Also the dang Joker himself, which we'll get to in a second. And the look on the interpreter's face in some of these pictures is pretty funny. If you feel like seeing them, check out those show notes in the episode description. I will link you to all the links that I'm using. Continuing, she even asked viewers if they thought she was sexy and invited them to add her on the messaging app Line, promising to respond to each message personally. That seems like a mistake, lady. That seems like a huge, tiny mistake. Oh my God, I can't imagine the messages she got. I'm so curious. I'm not really that curious because I can imagine they're all just like really gross and horrible, but maybe she gave out like some like fake number, fake ID information. I don't know. Hopefully, if she was smart, because man, inviting can only imagine what perverts would do with that information after seeing this lady running for governor take off all her clothes and give a speech. As she addressed the nation, Uchino Airi took campaign theatrics to a whole new level when she started undressing during the broadcast. After unbuttoning her blouse, Miss Uchino delivered the rest of her speech in a nude-colored tube top. Now this is where I can't quite figure out what really happened here. Did she just keep this like skin-colored tube top on, or was she genuinely nude? I mean, these are the important questions we ask here at the Eschaton Review subsidiary of Heat Death of the Universe podcast. But continuing a little bit here. The political stunt quickly became the talk of the town. Clips of the unconventional speech spread like wildfire, garnering over 4 million views and counting on X. One post, which features only images, has over 18 million views. In response, numerous Japanese netizens expressed disbelief and embarrassment that such an incident occurred during a political broadcast in their country. Some even questioned how such a spectacle could have been permitted. And then some university professor provided insights into Ms. Uchino's stunt on a thread on X. He explained that during highly visible open elections, many fringe candidates utilized political advertisement slots and broadcast airtime to execute attention-grabbing stunts. Why not? I mean, this was like clearly the most interesting thing that happened during this election cycle, I'm sure. These antics range from advocating anti-war or anti-immigration, two very similar causes, anti-war or anti-immigration causes, to simply seeking personal fame. He noted that other such candidates typically do not vie for victory, but rather aim to dominate public attention. He also mentioned that Ms. Uchino is associated with the NHK party. During a recent debate among lesser-known candidates, she declared her intention to appoint party leader Takashi Tachibana as Tokyo's deputy governor. And that's all she wrote about the nudity. But the Joker, my God, the Joker. Hang on, I need to translate this article from Spanish to English. In an unexpected and controversial twist in the race for Tokyo governor, candidate Uchino Airi shocked audiences by stripping naked during her speech on public television and the appearance of the Joker on television. Another controversial candidate was Yusuke Kawaii? Not great with Japanese names, I guess. I know it's not kawaii like the word for cute, but it looks almost like the same spelling, so I'm just going to say it that way. Who cares? No one cares, Josh. All right. He arrived dressed as the Joker, the Japanese Joker. In another surprising move, the person known as the Japanese Joker also ran for governor of Tokyo. During his appearance, he laughed in front of the camera and even climbed onto a table to show that he was wearing heels, surprising both the audience and the sign language interpreter. There's a pretty good shot of this Joker fellow who appears to be wearing pants with the Joker's face on them as well. Interesting move. Another good shot of the poor sign language interpreter in the background watching this. She's probably actually having a great time. I don't know. Maybe the nudity thing could have been pretty uncomfortable, I suppose, but she's smiling in all the pictures, this interpreter. Kawaii 43 had already received a police warning for his controversial posters and defended his actions, saying they were seeking to highlight the importance of freedom of expression and change the morality of Japanese society. Since the clown is a kind of dark hero, I had the impression that he could gain support from the masses, and he hopes his character will help win sympathy among voters. Good luck with that, Mr. Japanese Joker Man, and good luck to you as well, naked lady woman. Moving on. Still in Japan, this was a story I had wanted to mention a little while back as well, so let's get to it now. Japan slams U.S. senator over Israel arms support / reference to atomic bombs. I'll give you 4 seconds to try to remember who specifically in the U.S. Senate called for atomic bombs to land on Gaza. Japanese Foreign Minister Kamikawa Yoko reacted to U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham's call for continued arms support to Israel, referencing the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. She expressed her disapproval of Senator Graham's comparison made over the weekend regarding the obligation of Japan to supply weapons to Israel. That was also a new twist for me, having looked up this article. I knew about the condemning of the remarks and that Lindsey Graham said we should drop a bomb on Gaza, much like we dropped bombs on Japan. But I did not know that he added insult to injury, twisted the knife even further by being like, and Japan's not giving enough money to Israel. God damn it. Just absolutely insane, triangle of facts here. Quote, given the current situation in the Middle East, it is absolutely unacceptable to bring up a discussion that cites the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki as examples. She also went on to say Hiroshima and Nagasaki disasters should never be repeated, and that Japan aims to promote a, quote, proper understanding of nuclear weapons' destructive reality. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham Sunday defended Israel's attack on Gaza during an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, drawing parallels to the use of atomic bombs in World War II. This will help show a little bit how dated the article is. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden, he is still president. I forgot again. I was going to say, he's not even president anymore. Well, anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? Okay. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden faced backlash on 9th of May for his announcement to suspend arms aid in Israel in case of a major Gaza attack, drawing criticism from both the Republican Party and Israel. God, remember how well that worked out? And speaking of how well things work out in Israel and the surrounding region, that'll have to hold on for a second because we are traveling westward here, and in between Japan and Israel is a little country called China, and got a few little items about China here. We could also call this the "but at what cost" corner. Here's a funny story I don't think I heard anywhere, and I wanted to bring it up a while back because this happened right after the ear assassination, which now doesn't even seem like a real thing that happened. It's funny how reality works. But yeah, immediately after Trump was shot, the New York Post immediately blamed the Chinese for this assassination based on absolutely nothing. But let's dig into that slightly. Get an exact quote for you from the fearless journalist at the New York Post. Did I say New York Times before? I meant New York Post. If I said New York Times, New York Post. We're talking Post here. They wrote, the shooter, identified as a Chinese man, was in a sniper position located hundreds of yards away from Trump's podium in Butler, Pennsylvania, as he spoke to a campaign crowd, sources said. So that's fun. And then the New York Post did, to their credit, not really at all, but I guess they even felt enough push to issue an official retraction and / apology, I suppose. So this is an article about that apology. The New York Post has issued a retraction and apology after incorrectly reporting that the gunman who fired shots at former President Donald Trump was Chinese. In an article published July 13th about the gunman, the New York Post wrote, "The shooter, identified as a Chinese man, ... The article was updated to clarify that the shooter was, quote, identified only as a white male. The publication apologized for the mistake in an editor's note at the bottom of the article, which read, in a version of this article on July 13th, the Post erroneously reported that the shooter was a Chinese man based on wrong information we obtained from sources. We quickly corrected the mistake. We sincerely apologize for the error." The FBI has since identified the shooter as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Of course, who can forget Crooks, the most Chinese of Chinese men. Several Asian American leaders and organizations had called for the New York Post to apologize for their mistake. So yeah, they felt a little pressure there. The Stop AAPI Hate, a nonprofit organization that has been documenting anti-Asian hate incidents since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, released a statement after the New York Post issued the retraction and apology, saying that they will be investigating the misreporting. What the New York Post did was incredibly dangerous, the organization said in a statement. Yes, the Post issued a retraction, but the shooting of a former president is frankly a shocking moment for it to have engaged in such reckless misreporting. It's hard to believe the New York Post did not realize what was on the line when it published that false claim: the safety of Asian American communities. We will of course be investigating and looking to speak to the Post further. Be interesting to get an update on that, actually. Note to self for another episode: look into the anti-Asian hate investigation of the New York Post. See how they arrived at, see what sources told them it was a Chinaman wielding the gun. All right. This is cool. This is good news. This podcast, Heat Death of the Universe, Umbrella Corporation's podcasting business limited liability company, is pro-nuclear energy. We're pro-nuclear energy here. And China has made great leaps in making nuclear energy even safer. First meltdown-proof nuclear reactor passes loss of cooling test in China. This is quite a scientific article, but essentially what they've done would make it so that I believe the last time there was any kind of like meltdown was the Fukushima plant in Japan, which was in 2011. Had they been using this newly developed technology, it would have completely stopped that disaster from happening, is basically the claim. And China's been testing this and constructing like a nuclear power plant with this technology since 2016. The research team sought to prove that the plant is incapable of melting down by revving both reactors up to full power and then turning off all external power. This immediately stopped water flowing to and from the turbines that are used to generate power. The researchers then monitored the plant in case of a meltdown, which did not occur. Instead, stable temperatures were reached within 36 hours. So that's cool, I think. Sort of more on the environmentalist style leaps forward as well. China's just like kind of crushing everybody in terms of developing wind and solar. Some of the stats on that here kind of interesting. China is installing 2/3 of the entire world's wind and solar power facilities. In other words, China is building twice as many wind and solar power projects as the rest of the world combined. China installed more solar power capacity in 2023 than the rest of the world combined, and more than the US ever has in history. China's investment in clean energy in 2023 was nearly equal to the total global investments in fossil fuels, roughly the size of the GDP of Switzerland. But at what cost, right? All those birds that are going to get chopped up by the fucking wind turbines. Do you ever think about that, China? You fucking asshole. And the most, possibly one of the most hilarious, but at what cost headlines I've ever seen in my life is the following. the New York Times, and now this time I do mean the New York Times, not just accidentally calling the New York Post the New York Times. The New York Times wrote an article entitled Jobs, Houses, and Cows. China's costly drive to erase extreme poverty. China has spent heavily to help its poorest citizens, an approach that few developing countries can afford, and even Beijing may struggle to sustain. Dun, dun, dun. So the quick version of this story is that it was announced like maybe a year ago, I want to say, that China had officially lifted 850 million people out of poverty. And there were just all these articles along the same lines as this New York Times one, essentially doing the, but at what cost? I don't even know what else there's to really say about it. Other than, I mean, it's just an absurdity, especially coming from countries that have a citizenry that is just like having a lower and lower quality of life, we'll say. A country that pays more per capita for healthcare and has worse outcomes than most other countries in terms of health outcomes. You know the drill. You know the facts, right? Just, it's really rich coming from the United States to be like, it's like no matter what China does, they're going to get the but at what cost treatment. That's really just kind of the bottom line. It's like, oh, they've decided to end world hunger. Well, la-di-da, but at what cost? There's always a hidden cost. I don't know how you can shrug your shoulders or turn your nose up at lifting, I don't know, it's almost a billion people out of extreme poverty and not just say, hey, good job, or maybe just not say anything if you're just the jealous type, which all these kind of articles always just come off as like reeking of jealousy, essentially. It's like we have Amtrak. China has the most kick-ass high-speed train system in the world. You know, it's just and on and on and on. And this is not the last you'll hear from the but at what cost corner. But let's move on to something else. Another nation. That would be the nation of Israel. And boy, howdy. Just in the last, say, week, maybe some of these are maybe from 2 weeks ago, there's quite the laundry list of stories, a flurry of headlines, if you will. I mean, I'll start with the one that is most currently, I feel like, on everyone's mind, is this, suddenly Americans are now aware, and I'm including myself, like I was not aware of these people before, but two nice Jewish boys could also be called two of the evilest fucks ever to ever exist and speak into a microphone. That is the name of their podcast. These two Israeli guys. I mean, they could be easily mistaken for Americans. At least the bald ass guy, bald motherfucker, who's the evilest of the two. It seems like the other guy just seems more like kind of like a hype man who just sits there and goes like, yeah, that's right. You tell him. I want to press the genocide button too. Anyway, this is kind of like blown up, at least in the, I don't know, left Twitter world, maybe elsewhere. I'm not really sure, but I've seen it in my little echo chamber on repeat a lot in the last couple days. I'll probably insert some of the best of their clips into this, but I'll also just kind of describe what I saw to you. Probably the most popular clip going around. You know what? I'm going to listen to it and talk about it. Here we go.
So I would, if you gave me a button to just erase Gaza, every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow, I would press it in a second. That's just, I think most Israelis
if that's agree. The choice, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, even if it's not like right now.
Yeah, no.
I would press it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I hate these motherfuckers.
Same with the territories.
I would press it right now.
So
no
smug.
choice. No, Shawan is safe at home. God willing, I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in like an hour.
No, I'm saying for the chance.
Oh, for the chance. I see. Okay.
Yeah. I would press it right now. Give me that button and press it right now.
Give me that button.
And I think most Israelis would.
Yeah. Most Jewish Israelis.
They wouldn't post. They wouldn't talk about it like I am.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't post. They wouldn't say I pressed it.
Yeah.
But they would.
They
press
don't
it.
have balls of steel.
Oh,
like
balls of steel, bro.
But they would
Yeah,
press
let's
it,
chuck-
right? Like if they were in a
Yeah.
closet alone, they wouldn't even hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
Someone came to them and said, "No one will know. You press this, all the Palestinians are gone." You'd be like, "Fucking hey, is there another one?"
Isn't that hilarious? That's hilarious. The fucking, I want to give credit here. Yes. In the Discord, DJM6000 said that the non-bald guy looks like an Israeli version of Destiny, which I agree with. He's got Destiny vibes. And Destiny politics, I guess, probably, right? I mean, that's Destiny's whole thing, is apologetics for genocide. And so, like, some people might want to dismiss these two Israeli assholes as, like, oh, they're not really representative of Israel. They're probably, like, fringe figures. But, one of them worked directly for Netanyahu's campaign, and he has it proudly displayed on his website. Just a bunch of different pictures with him posing with Netanyahu, smiling and giggling the way that he was in this podcast clip. Yeah, it was the Destiny looking, the not bald one, the one doing least of the talking, the hype man, just giggling and fucking telling the bald asshole that he has balls of steel for being able to press a button to destroy millions of people. I can't, it's mind-boggling that it's sort of like, I get if like some non-Jewish, say, racist assholes were talking like this, but there's a point where it's like, how do you wax poetic about the Holocaust, etc., and watch Holocaust movies and read Holocaust books and do Holocaust charity things and museums and all this shit, and then talk this way out the other side of your mouth? It's wild to me. It also makes its own kind of fucked up sense as well, I guess, too. But so here's what the asshole said. I worked with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on both his 2019 campaigns, as well as his 2020, 2021, and 2022 campaigns. Jesus, how many fucking campaigns? All right. Doing chatbots, digital data projects, and viral video creation. Does this make you like this guy even more than you already did? I was also responsible of this guy really, he's less just American than the bald guy, because this is some like English as a second language right here. I was also responsible of managing all the digital channels of the Prime Minister. One of my main projects during the campaigns was Netanyahu's Facebook and Telegram chatbots, which I initiated and managed. The chatbot played a significant role during the campaigns, helping to achieve phenomenal results. The chatbot project received vast coverage throughout Israeli media. And then there's a picture of him operating a camera in front of Netanyahu at his desk, taking more pictures of him. More of that, even more of that. Them looking at a computer monitor together like they're doing something important. More pictures of taking pictures. He's very proud. Yes. Okay. So this is all to say these are not necessarily like fringe types. It also has been claimed, I'm not exactly sure how true this is, but apparently it's the most popular English language Israeli podcast. Another funny thing about these two assholes is that since people have been tearing them down online after this particular clip that we just heard as the one that's mostly getting circulated around, but there are others that are like pretty much equally as shitty, but I guess this one, it just gets really to the point, you know, the red button of genocide. They've been going around and like commenting on these posts that are calling them, you know, evil Zionists and whatever, genociders, and just posting like like winking emojis, or I don't even know whatever. Just like they think they're funny, and then they just post like a GIF of a finger like smashing the shit out of a red button. So they're doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on, we really mean what we say when we say we want all Palestinians to disappear at the push of a button. My first reaction to this too is almost like, this seems like parody. This seems like if there were such a thing, it would be like anti-Zionist psyop. like here's how we could turn people against Israelis. Just like make this fucking obscene podcast clip. But no, it appears to be very real. And like I said, this one member of the duo proudly worked on 4 or 5 campaigns of BBs. Let's listen to maybe one more. What's the next one? They also they had something to say about the polio outbreak. So let's hear that right about now.
Doing it
to appease the...
It's because we're looking for international legitimacy. Mm-hmm. No one actually gives a shit. 0 people in Israel. If you go up to them and you're like,
at these people's face.
Do you care if this baby in Gaza gets polio? They'll be like, I don't fucking just...
If Oppenheimer would care.
Yeah, okay, there'll be like 20 people who care, and they're all wearing Meretz shirts. Like, fuck them. But
Jesus Christ.
Seriously,
what are they laughing
would give
at?
a shit. They'd be like, "Leave me alone, man. I'm trying to like buy
Eat
shit
ice cream
for Shabbat. Like, fuck off. I don't care about this Gazan kid with polio."
Also, as long as they're in their Nakba state in their tents, and we're living still, like, if you put aside the news, day to day is okay. Yesterday we went to a concert.
Yeah.
In Erkon Park, we had lots of fun. Me and my girlfriend.
This is where it gets real.
Shalom Chanoch.
Wow.
We danced, and it was amazing. And you can't help but think like it's nice to know that you're dancing in a concert while hundreds of thousands of Gazans are,
homeless,
like sitting in a tent and eating.
We can all relate to this.
Yeah.
More enjoyable concert. If only they put the
live video
footage of Gaza. Like, but seriously, you guys like that. That's what people don't understand.
But
Look,
seriously,
I know that you guys
guys
might be appalled by this, some of the listeners, but seriously, this is
Yes,
how Israelis
we
feel.
are.
And you might think that Eitan Weinstein and Naor, who like refuses to kind of back me up on it publicly.
I'm from the UN.
Yeah, he's the UN. But you might think I'm extreme. But I have conversations with lots of people, coworkers, friends. People enjoy knowing that they are suffering.
No, also it's very prominent on Twitter.
All right. Jesus God. So these 2 fucking buffoons, as we just heard, one, think that who gives a shit about babies getting polio? That's basically a direct quote. You just heard it. And it's the delivery is so infuriating too. Like, kind of like no matter what subject these guys were talking about, I would hate them on some level. Like, just like aesthetically, they're so objectionable. But obviously the real crime is the content of what they're saying. So like I said, I can't even stand looking at the bald asshole and just the smug giggling and laughing and like the sort of like we're being edgy, he's like throwing in some swear words to like make it sound like real cash and sort of edgy. And I don't give a fuck about babies with polio, as if what is he trying to convince people of? Like, I think he's trying to. I mean, he's obviously, he keeps saying, "I'm not extreme. Like, this is what most Israelis think." It's like, who? It doesn't matter. Like, that's not a defense of what your position here. Like, that's not a defense of just carpet bombing. I mean, what will end up being if this shit doesn't stop? Like, 7 million people. Hey, 1 million extra. Got it? Because yes, it's not just Gaza, of course. The West Bank is under siege as well these days. what else did I want to say about that clip? I mean, yeah, okay. And the more disgusting part, of course, is them talking about how knowing that all that suffering is happening in Gaza makes life's little joys just a little sweeter. Puts a little spring in your step, you know? Like, you get a little spring in your step and you think, oh, did another baby just get polio somewhere? And then they keep upping the ante with their edginess. And like I keep saying edgy, but I don't even think they're necessarily they're not trying to be edgy for its own sake. Like they are really expressing their real views here. And like the laughter, that's why the laughter is so galling on top of everything else. It's like they think they're doing comedy or something here. I don't even really understand. I mean, the non-bald guy seems to like be giggling the most because I guess he just doesn't have much else to say. He seems like the kind of slow dumbass of the two or something. I don't know. But yeah, then going even further to say, yeah, what if we had live video to watch while we're enjoying dancing and shopping and whatever the fuck we do in Israel, taking Molly and abusing fucking Thai sex workers or whatever the fuck people do for fun in Israel, you know? It just makes it all the sweeter if we could just have a 24/7 live footage like directly linked into our brains, you know? Forget about screens. Just put it straight into our brains. So at all times we can have optimized joy, knowing that all of the suffering is happening, knowing that the Nakba conditions, as the fucking non-bald one calls it. He's just outright dropping the N word, as it were. Like sometimes Israelis are like, they like want to put a moratorium on the use of the word Nakba, period. Even though a lot of Israeli politicians even will just straight up refer to like, we need another Nakba, which is what's going on right now, except worse. What's happening right now is worse. So that's two nice Jewish boys. I had another clip, but I don't even want to play it now. I actually have a shit ton of stuff about Israel, but I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Can always bring it up another time. Okay, editor's note here. It's me again. There was a great point made by Owen Jones, the independent journalist who does a lot of great work on Israel-Palestine issues. And he covered a little bit of the Two Nice Jewish Boys podcast. And he had an interesting take on the law as it pertains to them. So I'm going to include the third clip, which is much shorter than the first two, and then a little bit of what Owen Jones had to say after the fact. Not the whole thing. I recommend watching the whole video, which will be in the show notes, but I'm just going to cut out the most relevant bits. There's a point that I wanted to make on the podcast, but I forgot to make. I would have credited it to him had I done so. So now I'm just going to play exactly what he said in his own words. Here we go.
We, as a Jewish people, bring flourishing to a place while the Palestinians just bring shit culture and destruction. It's like no one talks about the fact everything is about comparing us, right? And saying, oh, well, what would we do in this situation? What would they do in this situation? And trying to, it's like, no, we're better. We're just better. We're better. Like, I don't know how else to put it.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. We're better. We have a better culture. We're a better society. And yes, it would be a great thing if we took over all the West Bank and they weren't there.
Israel is legally obliged to prosecute these two people. The 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide prohibits 5 acts. And one of those acts is the direct and public incitement to commit genocide. It makes that clear. It is one of 5 offences under that genocide convention. Well, there's nothing subtle about what they say. You can't use some pathetic weasel words to pretend these people didn't really mean what they went out and said very clearly, explicitly, and unapologetically. This is a slam dunk, clear-cut case. Israel was a signatory to this convention, born, as it was, out of the Holocaust. And Israel put this convention, translated it into its own law on its own statute books in 1950. And get this, it made, under Israeli law, the direct public incitement to commit genocide a capital offence. That is, it is, theoretically at least, under Israeli law, a crime punishable by the death penalty to incite genocide in the way these two gentlemen clearly have. I don't support capital punishment in any circumstances, but I do believe Israel should abide by its own law in this case on prosecuting the public incitement of genocide as per its legal obligations under the Genocide Convention of 1948, which, of course, it implemented under its own law. To further underline this point, the International Court of Justice, the highest court on earth, in January, in its provisional orders, ordered Israel to prosecute those guilty of the public incitement of genocide. So, as per international law and Israeli law, these two men will now be prosecuted, right? Won't they? What is there to lose? I mean, if they're just fringe extremists, no one's going to care, are they? There'll be no outcry. Israeli society will rally behind that decision. People will go, look, whatever you think about Gaza, oh my God, this is outrageous, this is despicable. Of course, our own law says public incitement of genocide, this lot, they definitely publicly incited genocide, bang to rights, lock them up. This brings shame on Israeli society, it brings shame on Israel. We don't want the world to think this. The least we can do is to prosecute them as per our own legal obligations under our own law. What will be the problem? Where's the obstacle? It's a slam dunk case. They need to be sent to prison, not executed. I'm not saying Israeli law should take it to quite the level which, in theory, it could be implemented.
Moving on to Western Europe, Germany, far-right political party has made some major strides there, and who's ever been alarmed about a far-right takeover of politics in Germany before? You'd be a fool to be afraid of something like that. There's literally zero historic precedent saying that that could lead to something bad. So, good for you, far-right guys. What's the name of the party? The AfD. But what does that stand for? Alternative for Germany. That's right. Let's look into the Alternative for Germany's politics a little bit here, just to give a little bit of a rundown. Yes, far right, of course. They also like to use the word populist, like all asshole political people these days do. It's an abuse of the term. I've gone on about this before. They are the German judiciary has classified this party as, quote, suspected extremist. But they kind of give them some credit because they do not outright reject democracy as part of their political platform. But let's see. What's just a quick rundown of this is what they believe. I mean, what I've gathered is essentially one of their big hang-ups is immigration. They see it as the root of all evil, essentially. That's how the Nazis started off too, folks. Just a little bit to the right of an immigration policy. But I digress. Good luck, Germany. I know you're not all horrible over there, but it's a shame. It's a shame to be seeing far-right movements kind of sweeping a lot of Europe. But not France, at least, I guess, right? Although I don't even know what the deal is with that at this point, since last week at least. If the left is holding their own, or if Macron is just crushing them with the Nazi she-wolf Le Pen. Bidding auf Wiedersehen to Germany, we leap over to the UK, where a recent development has happened that amounts to basically nothing. It seems like a very cynical gesture trying to appease people that are not so keen on genocide. So they've suspended some arms exports to Israel. And to be more specific, about 8% of what they normally are shipping to Israel has been suspended. Suspended. It means this could change as well. But it's like, it truly doesn't matter. It changes nothing in terms of putting pressure on Israel. But despite that, Netanyahu's definitely been shooting off very angrily, as has Joe Biden about this news. They're both right pissed. Well, if I'm going to say right and then pissed, right in the British sense and pissed in the American sense. They're angry. They're angry about it. And the Foreign Secretary, David, I don't know how to say this last name. I'm going to say Lammy. He announced this. But of course, he had to like pivot and insert caveats all about the classic line, Israel's right to defend itself, blah, blah, blah. This is not an arms embargo. But then, like, they go on to say the reasoning behind this suspension of 30 out of 350 arms shipments is because Israel is breaching international humanitarian law. So it's like, what? So you 8% believe in international humanitarian law? Like, what it's just it's the whole thing is fucking ridiculous. Like, do they really expect like a pat on the back from like all the people like protesting in the streets? Like, what is this supposed? This doesn't accomplish anything. I really don't even understand the point. It's like worse than doing nothing. It's actually somehow worse than doing nothing because it's dabbing on us, folks. It's dabbing on us. They're end zone dancing and dabbing all over us with shit like this. So that's the long and short of it as I see it. Finally, got some news from Yemen. Shout out to Discord user and listener to the podcast, Hazy, for alerting me to this article. The Houthis now rule the Red Sea. America has silently admitted defeat. This is on a website called unherd.com. Herd as in like a herd of cattle or sheep. Okay, read a little bit from it. If you've been following the news recently, you could be excused for thinking that the blockade in the Red Sea by Yemen's Ansar Allah, commonly known as the Houthis, has been defeated. In recent months, we've heard barely a squeak from foreign policy, quote, experts about the insurgency. Does this mean the matter has been taken care of? Not quite. Today, the blockade is stronger than ever, and the American military has given up on trying to lift it. Just a fortnight ago, faced with a deterrent bolstered by 0 U.S. aircraft carriers, the Houthis managed to board a Greek-flagged oil tanker, plant some explosives, and chant, "Death to America, death to Israel," as the vessel went up in flames. Last week, the Pentagon quietly admitted that the tanker is still on fire and now appears to be leaking oil. Yeah, that's kind of shitty, I'll say. That's some collateral damage, Houthi-wise, but anyway. The oil leaking part, that's all I'm saying. This should probably be huge news. One of the most important trade routes in the world is now blocked by a ragtag group of militants, and the U.S. Navy has thrown its hands up in defeat and sailed away. And yet, we just don't want to talk about it. The reason for this seems to be fairly straightforward. More than just sharing a sense of growing embarrassment, we no longer know how to talk about what's going on. After all, America's Navy is supposed to be the most powerful Navy in the world. As every war film of the past 2 decades has insisted on reminding us, all it takes is a single aircraft carrier to force a developing nation to its knees. America might not be great at, quote, nation building, but boy, does it know how to bomb things until all resistance stops. Amen. Of course, Yemen is where these narratives collide with reality. Unlike Afghanistan or Iraq, the attempts to unblock the Suez do not really represent some sort of wasteful war of choice, one that we can simply walk away from when we grow bored. If the blockade holds, it will mean at least 2 things. First, the entire world will receive dramatic evidence of the growing military and political impotence of the West, which will have real-world consequences for Western diplomacy in regions like the Pacific. Second, and possibly more importantly, the Suez Canal is one of the most important trade routes in the world, and forcing container ships to go around it will manifest itself in supply crunches and structural inflation, particularly for European economies. Europe is already contending with the dual disease of anemic growth and an energy crisis. A blockade of a major trade route is the opposite of what we need. This is, however, exactly what has happened, and this time around, the U.S. clearly doesn't know what to do. In December last year, the U.S. Navy and U.S. Central Command first launched Operation Prosperity Guardian, which was supposed to safeguard shipping traffic against Houthi missile strikes. In January, when this mission began faltering, it launched Operation Poseidon Archer. Who comes up with these fucking names? Designed to bomb the Houthis into submission and deter them from further attacks on trade. The result has been underwhelming in the extreme. Months later, Yemeni casualties have amounted to, quote, at least 22 dead, while the U.S. has lost several expensive MQ-9 Reaper drones to Houthi anti-air missiles and 2 Navy SEALs who drowned while trying to impound a shipment of rocket components bound for Yemen. At first glance, the low casualties would suggest a simple lack of American will. The problem, many would say, is that the U.S. is simply playing with the kid gloves on. But this isn't really the case. The U.S. has, to the best of its ability, attempted to accurately identify and target Houthi weaponry and launch sites inside Yemen. But there's just one problem. It can't. In this era of drone warfare, mobile launch platforms, and advancing tunneling infrastructure, the U.S. simply lacks the ability to identify and blow up the majority of drones or missiles before they are launched. This problem is not exactly new either. Scud hunting was problematic enough during the first Gulf War, and Scud launchers were huge, lumbering things. Today, with the new drone and missile technology, finding a drone launch platform inside a mountain range is like searching for a needle in a haystack. And there's a more obvious problem, too. The drones are cheap, and American interceptor missiles and precision-guided bombs are extremely expensive. Added to this, the way in which these bombs are delivered, manned jet aircraft, adds another layer of expense, because jet fighters can cost upwards of $100 million in flyway costs. And far more when pilot training, at least $10 million for basic competency, maintenance, and infrastructure are factored in. In other words, the more America fights the Houthis, the more they will lose. Underlying this strategy is what could be called a modernized approach to Second World War era practices. Today, the planes are faster, the aircraft carriers are bigger and use nuclear propulsion, and the destroyers are outfitted with missiles rather than guns. But the rationale behind their deployment is entirely backward-looking. The use of manned aircraft for long-distance bombing once had a central role because there was no alternative. If you wanted a big ball of explosives to land accurately via the air, a human had to be up there to guide it. That, of course, is no longer the case, and yet a combination of prestige, complacency, and absence of functioning industrial base all conspire to make the U.S. military increasingly irrelevant. I'm glad we're spending nearly $1 trillion a year on it, though, right? Increasing irrelevance be damned. The result of this can now be witnessed in the Red Sea. If the U.S. Navy cannot even lift a blockade by Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world, the idea of lifting a blockade around Taiwan is a complete fantasy. If the U.S. cannot compete with the arms production of Iran, then the notion of somehow outcompeting China should be put to bed immediately. But this is also why the Red Sea defeat will be met with silence. More than any other conflict raging today, it highlights the crisis within the West's military organization, as well as the fact that there is no real way to fix it. To admit our powerlessness is to admit that the era of Western hegemony is already over. Faced with little alternative, we will continue to let the Houthis blow up our ships, and then pretend that none of it really matters. So, what's up with these Houthis, right? Why do they keep fucking with all these ships? What's their problem? Well, one, the U.S. has been waging war directly and via proxies, mostly via Saudi Arabia, since, 2015? I'm pretty sure. Nearly like 400,000 people have died in Yemen as a result of this warfare, most of them due to starvation because of a kind of blockade, multiple blockades that Saudi Arabia has put up with the support of the United States military and political machinery and whatnot. So they're kind of pissed about that, for one. But the other thing is that Yemen is very much in solidarity with Palestine and has made it very clear that these attacks on these cargo ships are not going to stop until the genocide stops in Gaza. Palestine generally, we should say now, because as I mentioned, the West Bank is now getting drawn in further and further to this whole nightmare, of course. But yeah, so there are reasons behind this. It's not just terrorists blowing up shit for shits and giggles, which is another reason why, as this article I just read, why the U.S. is not really reporting on this stuff very much, because it shows a little bit how cucked the U.S. has become, and people would be asking the basic question, why? Why are the Houthis doing this? And it would lead back to, oh yeah, there's a ocean of war crimes happening in this tiny strip of land next to the greater Israel. So any chance we have to not remember that, we're going to take it. All right, folks. I think that's where it's time to close out this transmission 001 here. My throat is raw from just talking for so long. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this solo podcast shit. This was my first attempt, so go easy on me, folks. I'm going to try to insert some other type of segments, things that maybe are a little more straight ahead, fun. But this was the maiden voyage, as it were, and yeah. So please check the episode description for various links. First and foremost, check out the link to our Discord server, the aforementioned Discord server. Come on over, say hi, say other things. There's some good activity going on over there. We have a Twitter account, a YouTube account, a Gmail address even, can you believe it? And other things that are all there in the episode description, including a link to the episode notes, which is just a Google Docs document with all the links to the things that I've talked about today. All right. Time for me to get back to floating around in this 0G environment in the bunker, and back to performing various scientific experiments on myself, i.e. masturbating and napping. Okay, signing off, ceasing transmission. See you next week.
Silence is always listening, 'cause we talk a little bit bigger. You go, the smaller it is. Is way too fast for getting sad pacing. And mom's mini van, I think I might be going to bed.
The first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?